Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the West Yorkshire Football Show and our usual Wednesday night look across the region's non-league scene. I'm Chris Bell, delighted to say, as always, joined by Lewis Sale. How are you, mate? You well?
Yes, very busy, mate. Very busy week for the pair of us, but we're all good. We're getting there, mate, aren't we?
Yeah, we've been getting out to the pre-season friendlies. I was up at Campion last night for their game against Bradford City, of course, memorial game for Dave Keegan. And yeah, a good night up there last night, fair to say, in front of just over 400.
Yeah, obviously you were there, so you had good insight of that. But yeah, really nice memorial for Kegsy. Absolute one of the good guys around the Bradford area non-league, and it's a fantastic achievement for the club to put on such an event, an occasion like that, and hopefully it's a bit of an annual thing to remember Kegsy.
Yeah, fingers crossed there will be something that can go on. We are going to focus tonight on the Northern Premier League East. Of course, we have many sides in that division from our region. I'm delighted to say we're going to start by chatting to the Bradford Park Avenue gaffer, Craig Elliott. How are you, Craig? You well?
Yes, not bad, thank you.
Thank you for taking the time out of your evening to join us. Let's start, I guess, first things first. I mean, you're a couple of weeks or what, 3, 4 weeks into pre-season. How's it been going? How are you feeling ahead of what looks like it's going to be, a very competitive MPL East campaign?
Yeah, I think pre-season's gone really well, to be honest with you. We've had some good friendlies, some good challenges. Obviously, you have a few games where players are on holiday. We had a couple of injuries, but on the whole, we've trained really hard. We've sort of got what we wanted to get out of it. And in particular, the last two friendlies have been really good for us. You know, we've played two excellent teams and the lads are sort of ready to go, I think, now.
Obviously, Craig, it's been a bit of an overhaul of the squad. We talked about that in a couple of weeks ago in terms of how that looked at the end of last season to this season. Do you feel you've got the people in the building to start the season well and get the games going? Because it's quite a tough start, isn't it? FA Cup and four real tough fixtures at home and away in the first month.
Yeah, I think you're right straight away. You look at the first sort of 3 or 4 weeks and obviously straight into the FA Cup, so there's no room for error. You know, you've got to sort of, if you want to do well in the FA Cup, you've got to be at it straight away and win that game. And then you look at the teams we've got to play, in particular Dunstan, Emley, Matlock, you know, and a couple of others that you expect all them teams to be up there challenging for promotion. So, I mean, but there's a different way of looking at it as well. It gives you an early insight of where you are as a team and a club. And if you're lucky enough to start well, then you've got some of the big hitters out of the way. I'm really happy with what we've got on board at the minute, but I think, as every manager will always say, I feel like you're always you want one or two more. But you know, we've got a lot of work done early, and I think, like I said, the lads are a settled team now. We've done well in pre-season, and yeah, looking forward to starting the real stuff.
In terms of the fixtures that you've played so far, Craig, have you been happy to get different kind of tests? Obviously, likes of Taddy away, Eccles, they'll offer a different kind of challenge to those likes of Halifax at the beginning of pre-season, and then most recently Guiseley.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think sometimes pre-season can be a bit tedious, and the friendlies are not great, but this year I've really enjoyed them. You know, like you said, there've been different challenges, and in particular the last two. You know, focusing on start there, I thought they were a real tough team.
Yeah.
Them, and I expect them to do really well. We did have a few players missing, but equally, it felt like a real football match. And then obviously Guiseley. You know, Monday, we know what quality they've got. You know, I mean, excellent manager and excellent attackers, and I'm really happy how we played, you know, and I were happy to win that game as well. So I think the lads are ready. I think, what are we, 10 days away now? So got one more friendly to have. We get 3 or 4 more players back off holiday over the weekend. And like I said, I think we're good to go.
Had enough of pre-season and ready for the better stuff?
Yeah, no, like I said, I'm not a big fan of dragging pre-season out of a 6, 7 weeks. We try to condense it into a 4 week period, and yeah, I think the pleasing thing this year, like I said, that the friendlies have been good. We've got a lot out of them. I've purposely not had loads of trialists, you know, maybe one or two. So yeah, but I'm definitely ready to see the back of pre-season. I think it's about the real stuff, and like I said, you can't beat sort of waiting for that Saturday for game time, really.
How tough is it to kind of balance pre-season, bearing in mind, especially with the season, the summer, sorry, that you've had in terms of recruitment? How hard is it to kind of balance the pre-season when you've got players that, as you just said, are away on holiday, that have already got holidays booked from before they've joined and that sort of thing? How much of a headache does that become sometimes when you're like, oh, crikey, like the entire back four is away on holiday and you need to
Yeah.
reshuffle things?
Yeah, you're right. I think we wanted to do a lot of set pieces this week, and it were hard because we knew we had some key players missing. So really, it was pointless to be doing that. So we'll look to do them the sort of final week of the pre-season. I think the hardest thing I find as a manager is obviously having to bring trialists in. Probably knowing deep down that some of them are not going to get a chance to stay at the club. And you're purely having to keep them for numbers and to be around the players because you've got players missing. And I don't like doing that, but equally, I suppose it's part and parcel of the pre-season, and this is what you've got to do, really. And like you said, you have to balance it out with lads going away. But look, we've got through it, and we're not far off now finishing the successful pre-season, really.
And I suppose, Craig, those challenges of players being away or trialists, etc., and not having probably the settled squad even in pre-season is a good test already, because that's going to be the case in it for every season where it's very rare you're going to have a full squad ready to pick from.
Yeah, I think that was a message before the Geyser game on Monday. We went into it with, two big centre backs sort of missing. In fact, 4 players that probably will come into the starting lineup. But I sort of mentioned that this could happen during the season, and some players might have to play out of position. And we had that on Monday, and the lads really bought into it. And that flexibility and adapting, you're 100% right. You're going to have to do throughout the course of the season.
We've seen also yesterday the announcement of Paddy Sykes returning back to camp, and I know he played a bit of a part for yourself last season. Obviously, that's happened now. Just want to share your thoughts on Paddy and how he's contributed to Avenue, and probably how he's going to contribute for Campion.
Yeah, superb lad. First and foremost, great lad. And how big a part he played for me last year. I think he more or less started every game when I was manager, and he was a superb player for the club last season. And I was looking forward to him to sort of contributing this season. But obviously, when you look at the squad, and the minutes he got over pre-season, the lad wants to play, and obviously I know sort of Campion people, and they're desperate to get him in, and I'm never going to sort of stop a lad playing football and getting minutes, and it wasn't fair on him. I was honest with him. I gave him the opportunity to talk to him, and he wanted to take that opportunity. So good luck to him. Goes with my best wishes, and I've no doubt he'll do well this year. We've trained him hard, so he's ready. He's ready for Campion. So he'll do really well for them.
So, like I said, 10 days to go before the first game of the season, but it's an FA Cup game, which I know we were speaking about. It's been a bit of a rarity, if at all, for yourself. How does that feel starting the season with, an FA Cup game in previous years gone by? Those watching maybe know that Avenue have not had the most successful cup runs. Yourself, Craig, have had some really good ones with Charlene and Boston. You've got a bit of an affinity with the FA Cup, haven't you?
Yeah, no, you're right. I think sort of my best memories in football are from the FA Cup, and they're fantastic for everybody involved at a club. I think the problem is this time, it's like you said, you've got to go straight into it and get the win. It's not like a league game where you can sort of maybe have a bad performance and make up for it. We've got to be at it that day and try and get through. So, look, I'm looking forward to it. I'm not going to hide behind the fact I want to do well this year in the FA Cup. I'm fully aware that Bradford's not done great in it over past seasons, and it'd be nice to create his own history at the club. And it'll be a long road if we're going to do that, obviously starting on the first game of the season, but just something we're really looking forward to, and it's nice to be at home. I think that's the main thing, and hopefully we can start the season off on a really positive note.
Obviously, that's going to start, and then, like I say, the league stuff against Matlock. In terms of the rest of the league as well, just before you shoot, Craig, and thanks again for joining us, how do you see the league gearing up? We obviously know that it's probably a quarter half dominated by North East teams. There's plenty around Yorkshire. We've seen some promoted teams like of Hallam and Silsden locally are not going to just make up the numbers. It feels a division that's going to be really tight, isn't it? And you've got to start well and keep that momentum going.
Yeah, I think it'll be stronger than last year, to be honest with you. I think obviously straight away Matlock are clear favourites. I know a lot of their players that played for me, and I know what pedigree they've got. So I would expect them to be the team to catch. But then you look at everybody else. There's a lot of teams in Yorkshire, like you said. There'll be a lot of derbies for us. The newly promoted teams I expect to do well. I always still coming into a league. And then you've got an handful of the North East teams that are notoriously always strong and difficult to play against. So yeah, I think when you look at it like that, there's going to be probably 8, 9, maybe 10 of us that really fancy his chances, and us included, that really fancy the chances of getting promotion. So exciting season, very much looking forward to it. There's a lot of big games to look forward to. Yeah, and it's it's a long season. I think that's the thing. We could have a great month and a bad middle or a strong end. It's I'm experiencing this sort of thing, and it's about just that consistency and sort of coming back from any sort of bad results as quickly as you can.
It's certainly a month, an opening month of the season that is a real mixed bag, isn't it? Obviously, you've got the favourites, as we talked about, Matlock on the opening day, a couple of Yorkshire derbies in August as well, with Emily and Pontefract, a newly promoted side in Hallam, and then
Yeah.
a tricky game against the North East side. It's talk about throwing every possible sort of opposition at you on the opening month of the season.
Yeah, it is. I mean, on paper, it's probably the hardest fixture we could have got on the opening game of the season. But equally, the most exciting one. I expect there to be a big crowd down there, and they'll be up for it as well. They know we've sort of recruited well, and like I said, I know a lot of their players, so it's a really tasty game. But like I said, it'll settle down then in August, and we've got some tough games. Like you said, Hallam away, be really tough midweek, and you can go on. I think. The first month of the season is always full of excitement for every team, and there'll be a lot of results up and down. So we've just got to try and stay, like I said, a bit consistent and pick up points, and then just slowly sort of improve as the season goes on.
I'm going to give you one final cliched question. How important is it going to be to make the Horsefall Stadium this season a bit of a fortress? That old cliche, because season ticket sales have gone very well so far.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I sort of know through promotions, you don't get promoted with having a bad home record. You've got to be strong at home, and so we should be. It's a 4G, it's our surroundings, and we want to be really strong. I think his home record pretty good last year as well. When I were in, so we want that to continue. And we're not going to achieve anything without a good home record. So we want to do that. You're totally right. We've sold a lot of season tickets, and we want to repay the fans for that, and not only win the games in the right manner as well. But yeah, looking forward to it. It should be really exciting.
Excellent, Craig. Thanks for taking the time this evening to join us here on the West Yorkshire Football Show. Wish you all the best for the upcoming season, and of course the FA Cup that starts in 10 days or so's time.
Thank you. Cheers.
No worries. Cheers, Craig. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.
That's Craig Elliott, the Bradford Park Avenue gaffer, and it is mad, isn't it? Like, people always assume from the outside world that perhaps aren't the people that kind of look at non-league football as closely as we do and think, oh, the FA Cup doesn't start until the first round or the third round in January. But it's mad, isn't it? Just when you really take a deep dive look at the FA Cup, it is their first game of the season for these non-league sides in August the 2nd.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a strange one. It's been one of those situations that has kind of just been brought in recent years, hasn't it? With kind of the league season starting just after the FA Cup. I think it adds a nice little incentive for those teams to just get going straight away. Like you say, you just can't have a poor start to the season because it's dog eat dog. You've got to win. It's knockout stuff straight away.
It really does have that pressure.
Yeah, it does. I think it's great, and I think Avenue have got Mossley at home, and I think Craig says home advantage would hopefully, really benefit them. And teams are going to be watching each other even in pre-season to try and figure out what systems, what players have got, and it's hard because we know that some of these players at the moment are unavailable, or they're trying different systems that might not be, plan A. It might be plan C, D, and E. But yeah, it's exciting. It's 10 days away. It feels real. Obviously, the NCL kicks off this week, and then obviously the FA Cup and etc. starts a week or so after, which is really exciting, and it's just feeling a bit more real. And we said it on our show last week that, I know that I felt like I'd had enough of pre-season. I think we're definitely getting that vibe now, aren't we? Where it feels like it was exciting 2 weeks ago. It's you've got to grin and bear it now for the next week before the real stuff kicks in.
Yeah, it's just around the corner at the start of the season. So I'd like to say now we're going to also be joined with another guest. That's Damo Wales, who is the media manager at Brighouse Town, also of the Northern Premier League. Damo, thanks for joining us this evening, mate.
Yeah, not a problem. I know I'm not the organ grinder that you wanted, but you've got me instead.
Not a problem. It's a pleasure to have you on, mate.
He's been called worse. Let's
just start, obviously, for Brighouse. Off the back of last season, obviously, which was a difficult season, the reprieve kind of kept you in the NPL East. Obviously, looking ahead to this season, where do expectations lie, do you think, for kind of those inside the club and those from the outside looking at Brighouse in terms of the fans' expectations?
Yeah, well, it's no secret, Chris, that obviously our budget is not at the top end of the league. You know, you look at the likes of Matlock and BPA; they're the ones that are up there with the bigger budgets. So we as a club know that we're, you know, down that bottom end of the league in terms of the budget side of things. But you know, we've defied expectations before. You know, we won the playoffs on a mediocre budget 5-6 years ago. Finished 7th, 10th under the previous manager. So it's not unachievable to do things on a smaller budget. But obviously nowadays, with the money that's being chucked about, it does make it that bit harder. Obviously, we want to try and finish as high as we can. We don't want a season like last year where we're having to, you know, fight on the last game of the season to try and eventually stay up, despite the admin error that we did have on the club. You know, without that, we would have stayed up anyway. So it's just obviously surpass last season's point total and see where that takes us, really.
Does it feel, Demo, in terms of a past year, 2 seasons? In fact, we know that, you know, mathematically at the time, Brighouse might have not been in the MPL East and might have been in the NCL, but is that little bit of siege mentality from you, you know, yourselves, staff, players, fans, that actually we deserve to be in this division and we can surprise a few people?
Yeah, 100%. Like I say, last year, without that admin error, that was just a typical error regarding, you know, a league fixture that we thought a player was not suspended for, which he was. Without that, we would have finished above that dotted line, and obviously Bridlington would have gone down. So, you know, we do feel that we deserve to be in the division for this season. And now it's obviously just, as I say, looking to kick on from last year. You know, we've had a good pre-season in regarding fitness-wise. You know, we've got a good solid 16, 18-man squad. And now we're just obviously looking to cement that with a few more players, get some more players over the line, obviously. And then we've got one last pre-season friendly against Gainsborough Saturday, and then on to the FA Cup fixture against Frickley a week Saturday.
Talk us through the recruitment that Grant Black has made so far in this pre-season.
Well, it's fair. It's quite shrewd. Obviously, he knew Jordan Preston from BPA. Is a Barnsley lad. So he knew Jordan from previous. Thirdy came about from literally just inquiring back into the club. He was at the club sort of 6-7 years ago. Went to Australia. Is now back in the country. You know, he came on trial, played pre-season games, and he's impressed really well. There's obviously still a few trialists that we've not named yet or not signed or made decisions on. Which, you know, hopefully we can get those over the line by, you know, the FA Cup game. But, you know, it's a dog-eat-dog world in this league. You know, you've got 10 teams in West Yorkshire all fighting for the same players. And it's obviously who wants to be at what club, what can each club offer. And, you know, I'd like to think that we've got a good solid 16, 18 players who are good enough for this level.
And you being involved in that kind of group as well, Damo, with, you know, Grant leading in a dugout, and obviously Danny Frost is a character as well, who's, you know, very well respected non-league, and you've just recently also appointed Ricky Ravenhill, which is a bit of a coup as well for the club.
Yeah, 100%. Frost is coming. Obviously, we had Darren before, who was the assistant manager. He's had to leave because of just work commitments and went to spend more time with family, so he left in the off-season. We've got in Frosty, who, as you say, have got plenty of experience at non-league level. And yeah, as you say, he is a character. You know, he's brought a bit of charm into the group, some good banter, some rubbish banter as well. But all around, yeah, he's a really good guy. And as I say, recently we brought in Ricky, who's got all the football experience in the world that he could want. You know, he's got previous experience in the dugout with Buxton and obviously Mikalova. So there's plenty of experience there in that dugout. And obviously Grant's been there and done it before in this league in terms of getting out of it. So, you know, off the pitch in the dugout, it's looking really good. Let's just hope it transpires onto the pitch.
How's it look so far on the pitch of pre-season? Obviously, you know, people sometimes can take results with a pinch of salt, as we know in friendlies, but how's it gelled together? Does it feel like the team are now ready to just get going in the FA Cup?
Yeah, 100%. The first couple of games, we obviously played Aversley and Worsborough, and for both of them games, we had 28, 30 players. So obviously looking at quite a few players at that point, so there was no sort of gel, no chemistry. It was just chucking 11 players onto the pitch and seeing who wanted to impress. So, you know, as I say, there were no chemistry. There were quite a lot of new faces. So, you know, you didn't really look at the score lines for them ones. It was more so obviously looking at the players individually, looking at the fitness and seeing obviously who stood out. And then we've chopped that down to obviously a good, as I say, 16, 18, 20 now. We've had some good results against Golka and Maltby Main on Saturday. Obviously last night we played Stocksbridge, but they've made some really good signings in defence, midfield and attack as well. And they look like a decent outfit for next season. So it's been a mixed bag, but in terms of what we want to get out of it, in terms of looking good going forward, and obviously the fitness side of things. I'm sure if obviously Grant was on here, he'd say he's more than pleased with what he's seen so far.
Like I say, you got the first FA Cup game against Frickley on the 2nd of August at home. Obviously, Frickley well renowned in non-league and around our area as well. At home, it feels like it's one of those that good to play at home and just get, like I say, a bit of momentum into what is, again, another tough. We talk about all the teams, it's going to be tough in this league, but like BPA, you've got a lot of challenges. You've got a North East team, albeit at home, and then away. Then you've got Ferriby, who was close to the playoffs. Ossett, a bit of a local derby, and then welcoming newly promoted Silsden before another trip in the North East, all coming in August. It's never ending, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, it's never ending. I mean, it's not as bad as counties where you're playing Saturday, Tuesday basically every week for 40 weeks of the year, it seems like. So it's not as bad as that. But with the amount of teams in the North East, in terms of that travelling on Tuesday nights, yeah, it's not ideal, but it's the same for them coming down to West Yorkshire and to play 8-9 West Yorkshire sides. So it's part and parcel. You got to play everyone twice, and I know it's a cliche, but you got to play everyone twice. Obviously, we've got Brighouse Town first game, who's a team that's been promoted from the North East. Don't know too much about them. Obviously, we'll see what they're about before trip obviously up to Newton Aycliffe, who were a really good side last season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, I say the fixtures become thick and fast as well, but in terms of across the division, obviously we spoke with Craig there, and you may have just heard a little bit of what he said. How do you gauge your rest of that league? I know you touched on it early in terms of a budget, but like I say, this season it feels incredibly tight with a mixed match of North East teams and Yorkshire teams, and we've seen a couple of sides of Belper and Carlton moving sideways to the Midlands. It feels very open, doesn't it? Let's be honest, mate.
Yeah, it is very open. To be fair, we did quite well against Belper and Carlton quite a lot, so I'm gutted they've gone. But obviously, as I said before, Matlock, BPA, they've made some really good signings. Take budgets away and look at the personnel. They're signing players from 1-2 leagues above this level. So that's what obviously we're competing with. We don't know too much about the North East in terms of their recruitment. I've not really looked too much into that, but around this level, Ossett have made some good signings. Ponty have made some good signings. Everyone's made good signings. It's going to be a really competitive league. Obviously, you have the team that's the favourite, Matlock, at the top, but then you're looking beneath that potentially, and anyone can beat anyone, the same as last year, just probably with that bit more know-how, experience, and obviously quality from what people are signing. So it'll be a really good league this year. I'm really looking forward to it. And let's see, obviously, where we end up come game 41, 42, however many it is this year.
It seems to
Lost
change.
count.
It depends if everyone gets through it as well, doesn't it? Depends if everyone makes it through the season.
Yeah.
Unscathed. Damo, thank you very much for joining
thanks,
us on the
mate.
West Yorkshire World Show and for taking the time to come on as well.
No worries, guys. Thank you for having me.
No
Cheers,
worries
Damo.
at all. Cheers, Damo. Thank you. There we go. That's Damo Wales, the media man at Brighouse, and he's right. He makes the point. He made the point very early doors about budgets, and it does. At the NPL East, we've said it before. It is becoming quite close in terms of the amount of sides that have got decent budgets, so they'll be looking at the playoff places. But at the same time, quite spread across, the whole division of 22 teams.
Yeah, there is a big difference between a lot of these teams. Obviously, you guys, when we did the League One preview show at the weekend, we talk about the haves and have-nots. It feels quite similar, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
There is a big difference between those with, deeper pockets and with respect to the likes of Brighouse, etc. But teams, even with smaller budgets, can build such a really good, solid unit together, real group mentality. Earlier, like I said, that siege mentality where us against the world, we'll take them on and we'll do our best to do it. And Brighouse have got to definitely harness that. We've seen, let's be honest, even despite that area, they would have potentially gone down. Obviously, they've been reprieved with a situation over at Farsley. It's going to be a tough season for them, but you feel that with the likes of Grant Black, Danny Frost, Ricky Ravenhill, they've got a real good core unit of backroom staff and players who are experienced to hopefully get them over the line and have a successful season. I think that success, let's be brutally honest, for Brighouse would probably be to stay up, mathematically and do better than what they have done in the past 2 seasons, and they're capable of doing it. Damo makes a really good point. It's hard going up to the North East, but it's also going to be tricky for those teams to come down as well. And we know from, watching the game and North East teams, they all feel quite similar. They all know each other. A lot of us, like in Yorkshire, do. There's quite a high turnover of players, and they all kind of just float between the different clubs every so often. So it feels congested up there. But there's no doubt about it. The quality of football from that northeast has definitely taken over the East Division, I'd say, over the past 2 years or so. And we've gained Blythe Spartans. I mean, Blythe Spartans 4 years ago were in the playoffs with like Bradford Park Avenue in the Conference North, and that shows how those clubs have suffered on harder times and easy to go into this level now. So there's going to be a lot of teams wanting to do well and to do better than what they did last year. But it's going to be hard to predict, because I would say there's probably, being realistic, probably about 12 teams that feel they've got a chance of being in the playoffs.
Yeah, I would agree completely. I mean, geographically, for a regionalised division, it is quite vast, isn't it? When you go, in the north, 2 trips to Blythe for obviously both Blythe Spartans and Blythe Town, and honestly, if we get up to that, I reckon that'll be a cracking derby as well between those two, without a doubt. Especially having seen Blythe Town in their Northern League playoff final when they beat Newcastle Blue Star at the end of last season. I think they'll really fancy themselves for that one up against Blythe Spartans. But then you look kind of towards the south of the eastern region, and you're down as far as Hallam, that's Sheffield based. You've got Lincoln United, those in Lincolnshire as well. It is a very spread league, and yes, Lou, I did have to mention Lincoln somehow.
Of course you did.
Hey, they're a newly promoted side into the division, and on the face of it, they're signing pretty well.
Yeah, signed some decent players. I've seen Staff Galinski used to be at Boston, I believe, with Craig at the time, and obviously Heath Richardson, who was at Ponty last year, their number one, has gone to Lincoln. So they're making some shrewd signings. I think Ethan Bojang as well has been in a local area, signed for them in midfield, and yeah, it feels very tight. There's going to be a lot of teams I think will surprise a few. Hallam on that pitch, and the crowd that get behind them is going to be
the slants. That is just for people that haven't been to Hallam.
Exactly, and they're going to gain a lot of points, and they've done remarkably well. Silsden coming into this league, we've been speaking to Cav as well recently. I'm sure we'll try and get him on a show at some point. They feel they're getting a real good core group of players together that they've signed. From like Tommy Brown from Knaresborough, Sam Barker being at Gaffer, George Sikora, who's known this league as well. It's quite a solid looking recruitment. It could go either way for a lot of these teams, but I think the first month of August is such a big test for some of these clubs, because they're potentially playing 2 FA Cup games and maybe 4 or 5 league games within the space of 30 days, which is a real big ask. And, my thoughts on it, I won't bore people. But
let's just say Lou isn't as much of a fan of it as I am. The way I look at it, and let's quickly go into it without getting too deep in your part, but to me, it kind of makes sense, because how often do we see that when we get around to October, November, December, the weather, especially with the way that it's been a lot more extreme, it feels, over the last couple of years. The winters have been a lot harsher, it seems. How often do we see the postponements hit, and then suddenly you get to February and March, and you're back into this kind of Saturday, Tuesday run because of postponements? So, by loading the season early, whilst the weather is good, although not if you look outside it isn't, whilst the weather's good, strike whilst the iron's hot. I appreciate, though, it is challenging for the players that obviously have to kind of go through that after these, quite intense pre-season workouts.
Yeah, I just think they can spread it over 2 or 3 months longer rather than really front loading it really early doors. I think it's such a tight schedule, and we see elite coaches, elite players talk about playing a lot of games because obviously playing various competitions, but these people, we've got to remember the vast majority of them are part-time players that have jobs outside. We've got families to look after. If they do get injured, that could affect their livelihood. And I think some respects there can be an element of just making sure that we are looking after our players, because it's a product at the end of the day. It's entertainment business, and clubs and players want to do well, that we can spread it into September, October, even potentially early November, just a little bit more, because I think to have the amount of games in the first month it's exciting for fans, and it's exciting for neutrals to go and watch games. Fantastic. But you very quickly, in my opinion, see the quality of games deteriorate a little bit, because it's just the amount of intense pre-season, the intense amount of games that have got to be played in a short amount of time. And I think if you spread it a little bit over that first quarter of the season, I think the product will be better, and I think we'd see the quality of games higher. But it's what it is. Players and teams, clubs, staff, they all know what to get what we're going to expect from that. And listen, it's going to be very rare that some of these clubs are going to pick up 2 FA Cup victories and 5 league wins in that month. That's just, that would be a dream. It's just not going to happen for 95% of teams. But at the end of the day, I think if you can even win one of the FA Cup games and get 3 wins under your belt, I'd say that's a decent return for August. It just depends on your expectations for where you are. I'm guessing Matlock would want to win both FA Cup games and win all their league games to set them up well for the rest of the season, because their expectation is, the bookies' favourites, so to speak, is to be challenging as number 1. But yeah, I think there's an opportunity for the league to just look at that a little bit in future years and just help clubs out a little bit more, in my opinion.
Time will tell whether they listen to you or not, mate. Let's take a quick look, then a quick run through the other sides in the NPL East then, from across our region. Emley, of course, they were playoff semi-finalists last season, losing to Dunstan. And, for Richard Tracy, it's not been too busy of a summer. Couple of players out, couple of players in, keeping these nice and steady. Just what Emley do. They just go about their business quietly, calmly, in a professional manner, and we'll see what it brings them come the end of the season. But you wouldn't be too surprised to see them around those places yet again. And say last season was their first season at this level, they did very, very well.
Yeah, absolutely nail on head with everything you've said. We said, haven't we, that we're really impressed by how Emley, go about the business, both on and off the field. They just seem to get things right. They've got a very strategic look on the club and how they do things, how they portray themselves, how they cover themselves in glory, both on and off the pitch as well. We've seen, obviously, this week, appointments off the field. We've seen them this week, with the signings of like Janae Gordon, that's been recently, and Alfie Dean, who's local from Ilkley. They're not scared of dipping into that market and giving players an opportunity to play at a higher level amongst what is a very strong, experienced collective group of people. Yes, we've seen Luke Parkin leave, but they're replacing with Ira Gooden, who they know inside out. He knows the club, so there's not much for him to get used to the club again. It's basically like for like. And Gordon's obviously got the experience at a higher level and scored goals and played for some really illustrious clubs. So Emley will be up very, thereabouts, in my opinion. I think we'll do well. Will they get in the playoffs? They're probably on the edge of it, looking at other clubs on paper. But you can never underestimate keeping a team together who have been relatively successful in terms of promotion and getting to that playoffs last year. And yes, we'll come to a point when that will need to be just broken up a little bit because age, injury, just the way the game works, there'll have to be some changes probably in a couple of years. But I think at this moment in time, it's very sensible from Richard Tracy and his team there at Emley.
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree. On to Brighouse Town then, and Paul Marshall's side again, who were promoted along with Emley into the NPL East, that last season being their first season of the division. And again, a very stable season last year from Paul Marshall's side. Nicely mid-table. I think, was it 10th or 11th for Garforth. And again, they've done some decent looking business. We saw them early in pre-season, and they look decent enough early doors, and they seem to be picking up some results as well over as pre-season has continued.
Yeah, I thought Garforth for me were one of the teams of the year, and that wasn't being disrespectful, but having been promoted out of the playoffs from the NCL, they cement themselves in the NPL East without any worry. They eased into that league, very comfortable in terms of playing against opposition Northeast, Yorkshire, and they held themselves really well. And what they've done is they've signed shrewdly again, as we know what Marshall does. The likes of Luke Aldridge coming in, Sam Apple, but they've kept the key players that have been there as well. The likes of Rina Rajobi, Viggers, Flatters as well. They just seem to have got, again, like Emley, a real good core throughout that team. And they could almost not far off field probably 1.5 teams in terms of the available players that they can put out, which is a benefit for Paul Marshall because he's trusted by his players and his club to get that squad ready. Do I see them challenging for the playoffs? Possibly. I think they'll have to have a little bit of luck on the side. But I think, again, a mid-table finish for Garforth would be a success. And again, that's no slight on where they are and what they're doing. They'll want to build on what they've done last year Maybe second season syndrome could possibly play into it because people may know what they're more like. Probably they may have not researched them enough possibly last year to see what they could do. But for me, they actually felt like they were getting stronger as the season went on last season, which impressed me more. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on. And Paul Marshall will dip into the market throughout the season. He did it last season. He will do it again this season. But yeah, mid-table for Garforth, higher end of mid-table is probably where they should probably finish.
Yeah, it's fair to say that both Emily and Garforth last season, as new promoted sides from our region, really set the example for
Absolutely.
other sides that get promoted out of the NCL in terms of how to do it, where possible. And of course, we'll come to Silverstone in due course. Of course, the new promoted side from our region this season. Let's carry on though alphabetically and move to another one of the sides and who finished particularly strongly. They were in a world of trouble. A change of manager, obviously bringing James Walshaw, did a great job to drag Ossett from the relegation zone to keep them up.
Yeah, unbelievable job. We talked about Garforth and Emily being some of the clubs of the year. Wally, for me, was up there as manager of the year in this region for achieving what he did at Ingfield to pull them away from a relegation battle into a comfortable position where they weren't really looking over the shoulder towards the end of the season. Yes, recruitment may have been a little bit tough on the face of it during pre-season, but again, they've probably kept an identity that they've had over the past year or two now. They've signed like Sam Pashley, who's a very decent player who's at Emily. I know he's recruited a couple more in that suit the mould of what Wally wants to go for. Obviously, Ryan Qualter's now left his number 2 to go to Taddy, so there's been a bit of a shift in the backroom staff. But for me, they have played probably more friendlies than I've seen any other club possibly play. And I expect him to probably do similar to how they ended last season with Wally in charge. He feels like, one, he's got the contact book as long as the Yellow Pages as well. He's got players that will know him inside out and he'll trust them to do the job there. And it just feels like, again, a unit together where they may not have the biggest of finances, but what he'll do is build a really good, strong unit. And yes, at occasions, it could be a little bit edgy, but I think in the end, I think Ossett will be fine. And I think, actually, in fact, they could surprise quite a few teams in this league.
And as Alabama says, Ollie Johnston's still playing.
He's still going his OJ.
He signed up at Ossett, midway through last season? I think it was March that he came in for the final kind of running at the end of the season for Ossett to help get them over the line.
Yeah, I spoke to him recently. I know, he was saying, obviously, he's had his situation with his injuries over years. I mean, he is a bit of a cult hero, shall we say, in terms of West Yorkshire and Guiseley and Avenue, and obviously now at Ossett. And even though he may not be able to put on his magic boots like he did in years gone by, like to Stockport and Norwich, he's got all the ability that you could ever want in a player. And just having somebody like him just around the club is a big plus for some of these younger players to learn off. And, they've announced the captain, Josh Askew, Connor Qualter as vice captain as well. Just a real good leadership about them. And again, people, just good, honest people as well. And that goes a long way in life and it goes a long way in football.
Yeah, Ossett starting the FA Cup team with Atherton, Laburnum Rovers away before a trip to Bishop Auckland on the opening day of the season. Let's move on though from Ossett, not too far down the road, to Pontefract Collieries.
Yeah, and that's going to be an interesting one because Ponty, as we know, are going to be sharing at Ossett while the groundworks are getting done there. So that will be an interesting dynamic.
I can take back that just down the road. I had slightly forgotten that they are starting the season at Ossett, whilst obviously all the work is being finished at Pontefract in terms of them getting the ground upgrades and the new pitch put in.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? To be fair, John Williams has done a really nice recruitment job again there. Naya Payne is a standout for me. I think that's a really, really good signing. He was at Brighouse last year, one of their standouts. Frankie Sinfield, who got released from Halifax, has joined permanently at Ponty. Another really good signing. He seems to strengthen in areas that were probably needed. Yes, they've lost Elliot Walker to North Ferriby, which will be a blow for them, but they've kept the two Burns brothers there together, back together. They just, I don't know. Will Ponty be probably lower mid-table, maybe looking over the shoulder, possibly just because of the situation that's ongoing at the club. They're not going to be playing at home and all that kind of does mix into the mixing bowl. But I think the way that they finished the season last year was relatively strong. You know, they pulled themselves out of a battle in relegation zone and kept themselves safe, and they'll be wanting to do the same again. Probably similar to Ossett. I'd say they're going to be similar, thereabouts. But yeah, I think they'll again, they're going to be surprising a few people. And what I will say is, even at Ossett, it's going to be a very physical battle against Ponty. And when you're playing some of them North East teams, you really need to front up and take it and give it to them. And Ponty will definitely do that.
That infield pitch is going to take quite a hammering in the opening month or
I think
two.
they might need what Ponty's going to get done there in the next season.
And finally, then, in terms of the sides in the NPL East, Silsden, of course, as we mentioned, Matt Kavanagh's side, newly promoted, having been the NCL Premier Division champions last season, and they're going well.
Yeah, obviously, like we said earlier, with some of the guys we spoke, we've spoken to Cav recently, and yes, have recruited big names in terms of what they did in the NCL. Probably not, and that's not being disrespectful for who they bought in. The likes of Tommy Brown from Knaresborough has been a very solid counties keeper for a while. Like I said, George Sikora, Sam Barker from Garforth, and they've signed. Who else have they signed as well? They've signed somebody else, and that took my eye as well. Let me just have a quick look. I'm gonna try and find it because I was pleasantly surprised who they'd signed. Let me just have a look. I'm going to find it. We're not live, don't worry. Tommy Brown, Danny Huntstead, Jordan Carroll. Jordan Carroll had been at Farsley, signed from the Welsh Premier League. I thought was a really nice signing. They just feel, and Jerome Greaves, that's it, who was at Belper. Seeing him as well over the recent time at Farsley and Belper, and that's a really nice signing. So they've got a lot of options, a lot of experience. It could be tricky. Do I see them doing as well as what Emily did last season? No. I'm going to put me, I won't say on the fence with that. Do I think they might do something to what Garforth did? Yes, I think they probably will do. They're not going to be an easy team to face. I don't think many people will know what to expect from, especially the North East teams. I think they'll be trying to work out how Silsden play. And we know that Cavs team, one, like to play football, but they like to be physical. They like to dominate a lot of teams, both in the air and on the floor. So, and it's not an easy place to go, as much as it's one of the best grounds, picturesque grounds that you'll see. I think quite a few North East teams could go there and struggle.
Yeah, I think they'll be particularly strong at home this season. The Silsden, and as soon as you said John Green, I'm thinking that name rings a bell. Of course, he had a stint with Guiseley back in 2022, and he's a big lad as well as Jerome Greaves. I think he's 6'3", 6'4", so he'll certainly add something to the forward line for Silsden, and of course for them. Can't talk about Silsden without touching on Cale Price, of course, as well, who had a really good season last year. I mean, let's be honest, he's had really good seasons wherever he's been throughout the last 4 or 5 years, as Cale Price. But now is that step up for him, isn't it, to this level? Because it's always been at kind of Counties League, whether it was Steeton in the Northwest or Silsden in the Northeast. Yeah,
it's a big step up. We've seen players like Civic Garforth and Emily step up. It's time for players like that. If Cale Price is Ilkley Brooksbank as well, is an exceptional winger to step up. I think he's been set his academy. So, but you know that again, he's got a really strong team around him. I think Jake Maltby's a super player. Fully deserved his move to Hyde. Unfortunately, didn't always work out for him. So obviously he's gone back to Silsden. But to have somebody like him in that centre of the pitch for Silsden, I think is a real big coup for him for this year. And I think, yes, like some of the others I mentioned, I think they'll probably finish maybe just above the likes of Brighouse, Ossett, Ponty. I think they're strong and having that momentum carried over from last year. And they haven't lost too many players. They've strengthened, which is a really good plus. Yes, they've lost the likes of Ross Daly from a leadership perspective and Jack Stockdale, but what they've got is the likes of Jordan Carroll, who knows this level inside out, Sam Barker, who's diminutive in his stature, but can pack such a big punch in that final third. We spoke about Tommy Brown in goal as well. They've lost Callum Bradbury, but Tommy Brown, with respect, is probably a step up. So you feel like they've just gone about it the right way without, like I say, signing big names and what they used to do in the NCL. But listen, if they get off to a really good start, people will be going, "Oh, is Silsden going to do something here?" Or, if they do have a bad start, people may be questioning it because it is a brand new level for Silsden. It's going to be a brand new level for Matt Kavanagh and the guys there, because I don't think they've been higher up more than the counties, so it's a new experience for them. So yes, it will feel new, but knowing how Silsden operate and what resources they may have to possibly pull in maybe signing a few players to help bolster the squad, I wouldn't worry too much about Silsden.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting season, I think, for Silsden fans, of course, for getting into this division. They start the season, the league campaign, away at Emily on the opening day. In fact, they start the season with a few Yorkshire games. They start the season with Emily away, followed by Pontefract at home on Tuesday night, then a trip to the seaside to face Bridlington Town, and then Saturday the 23rd of August is Blythe Spartans. And when I've talked to quite a few of my mates from the local area that aren't necessarily as nerdy about non-league football as I am, to kind of give them the context of what Sills have achieved by getting this promotion into the MPL East, it's using the likes of Blythe Spartans and Bradford Park Avenue as that carrot stick, because it's, again, your Football League supporters know of Blythe and Park Avenue and the like from Football Manager, of course. And the fact that Silsden are now in the same league and playing Blythe Spartans kind of blew a few people's minds. But that is the nature of non-league football of the Northern Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is no disrespect for clubs like this, but having been involved at Avenue for as long as I've been, we used to play Silsden in pre-season friendlies. That was the first pre-season friendly you sometimes went to when we were in the Conference North with the likes of Mark Bauer, Danny Boschel, and there's incentive there for the likes of Silsden to go, actually, you're not that big anymore. We're in the same league. You're not bigger and better than us anymore. We can win these games. And, we're seeing that down the line where people start to get quite big ideas about their own club, but actually you're there for a reason. You're there on merit. And one, that is either because you've just not performed well enough over the past 2-3 seasons, or in fact you've, not necessarily exceeded expectations. In some cases you might have done, but you've done what you set out to deliver and win games. End of the day, whether you're in the counties all the way up to the Premier League, your intention is to win every game. And if that's the case, you're going to get promoted or win the league. It's no different to the likes of Silsden. It is going to be like some Man City and Liverpool. So I think it's great for Silsden to be up there. Like I say, it will feel very new to him. They're going to have a bit of a shock. They are going to get some teams who will go there and turn them over at home, which may not be what they're used to. It's how do they react to that? How do they cope with maybe not winning maybe 2 or 3 games on the bounce to maybe losing 3 or 4 games on the bounce? Because that can easily happen in this league. Because, again, who you're coming up against. I mean, what a great tie to open against Emily away. That's your role model. If you're Silsden, you're looking at that going, we want to be somebody like Emily. That's exactly where that's a standard bed of where they need to get to. And, it's a good test for them, sets a level of where they are. I think it's exciting. I think this league, said it last year, it was a one to watch. I think even more so this year, it feels like it's stepped up a level. Recruitment's been very good in our area. With Damo made a really good point with quite a limited pool of players to pick from in Yorkshire and West Yorkshire especially. But I think, like I said last week about the counties, I think we could see possibly 1 or 2 giving a good playoff push. And I would say I don't think any more than possibly 1 team would get relegated from this division from West Yorkshire. I think we're going to have a strong season in the MPL East.
Well, you've kind of just beaten me through the next question. The next question was exactly in terms of how many do you think will make the playoffs? How many do you think all 7 will stay in the division? But you've just answered that.
No, I think with how Matlock seem to be going, you can't look past them. I don't think there's a team that's been at this level ever who have got the resources, the backing, the players are in there. There's players in there, the likes of Tom Elliott, the likes of Diego Giloma. They're National League North, potentially lower end National League players. They're that good. Connor Washington, who was at Derby County, has signed for Matlock Town. This is where Matlock Town are right now. So they are going all guns blazing to win this league. And you won't put it past them. I would suspect the way that Avenue have set up on paper, they look strong. You'd probably expect them to be in and around a playoff push, especially with the experience of the likes of Craig Elliott, who we spoke with earlier. He won't want anything less than a playoff finish. Anything in the playoffs, anybody can beat anybody. I think Emily will push very, very close as well. Again, I like the way they do the stuff. And I think, having not a massive overhaul of players will benefit them quite considerably. I think there's going to be quite a few North East teams who will be surprised this year how strong some of these Yorkshire teams are. I think last year, Bridge struggled. I don't think they'll struggle as much as what they did. Do I
No.
think they'll be as high as higher end of mid-table? No. I'm not massively wowed by the recruitment, by looking at it on paper, but again, all on paper. I think there's a few clubs in the North East who will be a little bit wary. You know, Newton Aycliffe, for me, were probably the best team I've seen all season last year, and they've lost their entire squad bar two.
Yeah,
Um,
I've been decimated.
Decimated. I mean, Jack Pettijohn, who was, for me, arguably one of the players, if not the player of the year, has gone to Stockton, and everybody else has kind of left around him. If I were teams in this league, I'd be the likes of maybe Heaton Stannington and maybe the likes of Concert. Would be a little bit wary. Ashington, maybe, possibly, I don't know. North Ferriby have signed some interesting players. And I mean, again, with respect, because I thought they'd sign some real good quality talent from maybe the league above. And they've delved into the market of those who may not have been always in the first team in and around this division. And that can work in your favour because some of them players have got a point to prove that actually they're good enough at this level. But it can also work against you when you look at the recruitment of other clubs. I think Redcar coming up from the North East will be incredibly strong.
Yeah.
Really like them. You know, Jason Jarrett, former Spennymoor man, has got a lot of players there. Mark Anderson, Adam Boys, which we know from the local. Adam Boys is there. Louis Johnson, who was, again, one of the players of the season at Bishop Auckland, signing there. We had a keeper on loan who was unbelievable. He signed there permanently. So Redcar will be definitely in and around that shout. I like I said right at the beginning, I see there's about 12 teams who fancy themselves to be in the playoffs. And I think the rest, like last season, at one point, it was super tight, and I can see it the same again.
Yeah, this is the thing. So many sides that will want to make those playoffs and that will feel that they've got a real chance of doing so, but so few that actually can.
Yeah.
So few that can. And then it all boils down to the end of season lottery. That sums up the NPL East then. Very quickly then, before we kind of finish, what else has caught your eye across our region then in the non-league scene? Halifax, again, continuing to visit national league level. Sean Hobson arriving, the former Southend and Oldham man at centre half. But what else have we got?
Yeah, like you say, Halifax recruited well with Sean Hobson. I know that our very own Shaman Stats was happy with that recruitment. You look at it on paper, they look a good squad now. They look a really tidy squad. Again, depending how they settle down and going with it. Yes, there's some players who probably got a point to prove at this level still. You know, the likes of Will Harris, who's at Spennymoor, and a few there have joined from Kings Lynn. But they seem to have got a nice feel about them. It's going to be fresh. It's going to be quite exuberant. One that Adam Lakeland will be trying to get the best out of. Will they finish in the playoffs? I'm not too sure, if I'm being honest at the moment. It feels like there's other clubs who've recruited very, very strongly in that division. But listen, it could definitely play into Halifax's hands where Lakeland can surprise a few, and they've done it. They can show they can beat teams. Yes, it feels different without Millington and Cooper there, and ironically bumped into those chaps last night, Monday night, which was really good to see them. And they're keeping really well watching games, and you know they send that regards to everybody who's watching the show as well after our interview, when they're looking around the region and just keeping an eye in, which you've got to do as people. I mean, I dropped my foot in it with Millie because he said to me, he went, "Keep up the good work, Lewis," and I replied, "Went, yes, you too." And then he took a second and looked at me and went, "I'm out of a job, mate." And I'm like, "Yeah." I realised when I said that, I maybe shouldn't have said that, but you know what I mean. So there's players and managers that are going to be really interested now. Like we said earlier with Craig, pre-season feels like it's done its purpose. It's now it's gotten to the real stuff.
Yeah, another one of the new arrivals as well for Halifax in recent days is Josh Amami, who's a little bit of a set piece specialist. Who, if it sounds familiar to anyone, I'm certain that he played for Marine against Tottenham in the FA Cup title behind closed doors, and everyone bought virtual tickets, and in the end, the club made an absolute fortune out of that game. But yeah, he's a very, very tricky little player who was at Kings Lynn last season, knows Adam Lakeland, of course, from there, and has now made the move to Halifax. Let's drop down then into the NPL division, the NPL Premier for Guiseley. Obviously, you saw them on Monday night against Avenue.
Yeah, listen, it's a tricky one, I think, for Bowers and Bosch. Yes, they're going back to kind of an old club, and they've got a very fresh, dynamic group there at Guiseley. I listened to Bowers' interview, and I couldn't disagree with it. If I'm being honest, it felt that there were just a few things that just didn't seem to go into the normal guys, the way of defending and just having that little bit of clinical edge up front. But listen, with likes of Jake Wright coming back, John and Fewlis, Will Longbottom, they will score goals. It's just getting that chemistry because, being realistic, they didn't play together last season because of the 2 injuries to the 2 players in Fewlis and Jake Wright. Will Longbottom scored goals for fun. You only have to have them 2. They'll be dangerous. Did I think there's possibly gaps in there? Maybe. I think it was, there were a couple of instances where you felt that they seemed to be just a little bit off the mark. But they had a fair number of trialists as well, which was interesting to see. And we spoke about that with Bowers and Bosch. In my opinion, it feels like they've got a really decent, and I mean in terms of competing week in, week out as a starting 11, probably 13, 14. It's that strength in depth that they might just need to count on. And at some point, they'll probably get the odd loan here and there from the clubs that they've always been closely affiliated with.
Yeah.
But it feels like it's changing in terms of the players and the style of play they're going down. Yes, against Avenue, they didn't have likes of Rydell, we didn't have likes of Dunstan in there. But they're going to have players out injured. You've got to deal with it. And it felt quite, when you looked on the bench and who was around it, it felt quite light. So I think Bauer and Bosch will be looking just to firm it up ahead of the season. But I would argue when they get it right, they'll be a force to be reckoned with. And I think they'll be definitely in around a playoff push. Because even though we talked about the NPL East being open, I think the NPL Prem is as open as it gets.
Yeah, I would very much agree on that one. And let's turn our attention to the NCL. What's caught your eye across our region there? Of course, a great many clubs all boiling down to kind of last-minute preparations, really, for the NCL, which gets underway, of course, this coming weekend. I mean, it kicks off at Montley Main on Friday night against Doncaster City, but for the sides from our region, it gets underway on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, brilliant. It's good to see that league getting up and running. Obviously, we spoke to the chaps from MNCL the other week, so do catch up on that with Matt Brown, the GM, who spoke us through how the league's set up and how it's going to go. It's an interesting time. Doesn't really cover our region that Friday night, where it usually has been Silsden. But you look across, the games on Saturday, Eccleshill travelling to Bottisford, Albion travelling to Frickley. We did the preview show again last week, so catch up with it. Campion, you saw last night in a derby against Golka, who, Campion could almost field 2 teams. They've got that many players. The standout tie straight away, first game of the season, Liverpool-Sheffield. That's a wow of a tie. You feel that, 6-pointer too early, first game of the season, putting it out there. And then Fackley welcoming him, promoted Winwell Town, Division 1. There's another range of fixtures which you can see on the website. Anthorpe Welfare against Brig. We've got Glasshoughton against Wakefield from a West Yorkshire perspective. Ilkley hosting Crown Colts. Route 1 against Leeds at Myra Shea, getting a debut for the home ground in the league. And then South Leeds hosting Gull. So there's going to be a lot of derbies. We're going to keep in touch with you all. But yeah, it's definitely one to see. I think there could be some interesting results, this first game of the season. And it always happens in it. First game of the season, second game of the season, people go, oh, well, that's a guaranteed home win or an away win. Never always happens. And I think we'll see a few quirky results, and albeit because we enjoy that, because I think it just keeps us all on our toes a little bit and keeps us guessing.
Yeah, as you say, it's certainly going to be an interesting opening day of the season for sides across our region. If you would pick out one side that you think, if we ignore the Liverpool Sheffield, because we know, as you say, the magnitude of that particular fixture with them both went down last season, opening day, who do you think is going to get the best result out of our region sides? Thackley have got an interesting one because, of course, for Thackley, Jerry Price has had to bring together a whole new squad. Of course, we saw Lewis Sugden most recently, I think, has signed on at Campion, having been at Thackley in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So for Jerry Price, he's had to kind of mould a new side together, and they're playing a side that scored, in excess of 100 goals last season in the league below, and we want to therefore hit the ground running in the league above for them, in the league that they've moved into.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy for Pricey, is it? Because, like I said, his whole squad's just been basically taken away, and he's had to replace it with young kids from academies locally.
Players that he's known elsewhere.
Exactly, like so Paul Walker, who's been in around the region for a long time, Owen Murphy as well. Most recently, we've seen Haskarji return, and a bit of an old favourite from Fackley, Nathan Hunt, has gone back there as well. So it feels, again, like a lot of clubs, very different. It feels like it's going to be a really interesting one, and I think it's a good indicator for where Fackley might already see where they're going to maybe towards the season, because Womerville Town have been remarkable last season to get promoted. Like you said, with almost a record amount of goals, we're playing a team who are very fresh, very new together, with quite inexperienced at this level. So I'd say that's an interesting tie for me. I think the best in terms of our region, maybe getting a good result. I'm going to put my neck on a line, and people are going to clip it up. And I know you are. I'm going to go Albion at Frickley. I like Albion in terms of where we're going to go this season. I said it last week. They're my outsiders to get promoted. I think they've got a real strong look about themselves, a real good unit. Some of the signings are very good. That home ground is going to be very, very important to them. I just think with the likes of Talent Unlove, Andrew Onamoke, super signings, Lewis Waddington, good signing, Ellis Wade, proving at this level he can do it. Just think they've got something about them. And like you mentioned last week, Nathan Cartman just scores goals for fun. For me, they're the ones to watch out for.
There we go. Anything else?
Not at the moment, mate. It's been a busy week, hasn't it, for the pair of us? So how we've managed to do an hour and do our research and get this podcast. If only people could have a peek behind the curtain at this week for the pair of us, it's been an eye-opener. So I will say, on the viewers' behalf, Chris, we deserve a pat on the back for this one tonight.
We'll leave it there in that case. I mean, I am away for 2 weeks. I'm not sure if you're going to rope somebody else in to give you a hand on the non-league show next week and the week after. But I'm away for 2 weeks on holiday in Scotland. Your favourite of all countries. So I will be keeping a very close eye on our non-league scene from a distance, whilst taking what I can of the finest Scottish football, as much as I'm able to get away with it, as I nervously look across to the family. Hey, to be fair, I've got Ross County versus Partick Thistle planned for Saturday.
I mean, doesn't get any better than that, does it, mate?
Hey, it's ticking off new grounds. It's doing something a little bit different.
It does.
What more do you need?
Says the man wearing an England shirt. The irony.
And on that note, we'll definitely end it there. Thank you, Lewis, for taking the time to join us. Thank you to Craig Elliott and to Damo Wales from Brighouse Town as well for taking the time, and for Craig from Bradford Avenue, of course. Wish them all the best for the upcoming NPLC season in 10 days of time when they start with the FA Cup ties. But Lewis, thanks for joining me. As always, mate, thank you for the comments that we've had over the course of the evening. And we'll be back here on the West Yorkshire Football Show very, very soon. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care.